Well, hello there and welcome back into the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. My name is Sam Hind and I'm so excited to have you here today because no matter what your business looks like, no matter what you do, if you are looking to grow on social media, you need to become aware of what your area of influence and authority is. And today, I'm going to be introducing you to an incredibly special guest, the beautiful Julie Masters, CEO and founder of Influence Nation. Julie is the secret weapon to many incredible companies all around the globe, helping them to understand their area of influence. And today, she joins us to share how you can identify what that area is for you. We had a fantastic chat. I know that you are going to get so much out of this episode, so get ready with pen and paper because Julie drops a ton of really powerful golden nuggets that will help you in your business, whether it be online or offline, to become an authority in your space and to stand strong and powerful in that. And most importantly, to know how you need to show up online in order to establish your authority and grow your incredible business. So, with no further ado, I'm going to introduce you to the beautiful Julie Masters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back into the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. I am so super excited to be joined today by the absolutely gorgeous Julie Masters, CEO of Influence Nation. Thank you for joining me today, Julie.
It's so good to be here, Sam. It's so lovely to see you again.
You too, and I'm excited to be seeing you in person, not in Australia where we both live, but in America in a couple of months. I love how that rolls. Yeah, it's exactly right. Let's go for dinner in America. Forget about Australia. We'll do that.
Let's leave Australia altogether, hop on a plane and go have a dinner date elsewhere on the planet.
Oh, I love it. Look, it's actually funny. I think the last time you and I saw each other was, in fact, at the DSA conference in Australia. And the next time we're going to see each other will be at the DSA conference in America. So I think that's kind of perfect how that works out.
We'll just make it a yearly date all around the world. We're going to do the UK next.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Let's our way around the planet.
Where else can we catch up for dinner? Look, this is going to be a lot of fun today because I know you've got so much incredible wisdom and knowledge to share with our beautiful listeners. And as you know, we've got an audience of people, growing direct selling businesses all over the globe. And I love watching your journey. You have such an incredible career story. I know one of the things I love about you is that you're so humble as well about sharing those ups and downs of, where you've come from to where you are today. And we were even having a little bit of a chat about speaking recently and how that, just keynote speaking isn't something that I don't think comes naturally to anyone. And you and I were having a fairly real story about, what goes on behind the scenes that the people in the audience don't see, right?
Yeah. It's not anything I think anyone wakes up or grows up going, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stand on a stage in front of hundreds, sometimes thousands of people.
And have them all judge me whilst I...
And have them silently judge me. Have them all stare at me while I talk.
Yeah.
I certainly didn't have it as a career aspiration.
No, and it's really funny, I think you and I have got a lot of similarities in that way because neither of us intended to be doing what we're doing today yet. I absolutely love watching where you are and given that background too, why don't you share just a little bit about Julie with our listeners? For those who don't know a whole lot about the amazing Julie Masters, can we have a little bit of a snapshot of what it is that you do today and why? What's that journey look like for you?
Oh, it started out as... I co-founded and co-owned a management company with a good friend of mine. And we began this company representing, managing speakers, authors, thought leaders. Started out here in Australia and then grew to include the USA. We had speakers based all over the world. And so we were like a talent management agency, essentially. Yeah. And so for 15 years, I ran that. And that was my... That was my passion. That was my job. That's what I did. You meet these people like, I'm a behind the scenes person. Mm-hmm. I was the behind the scenes person, and very happily so. I was very happy being the person behind the people on the stage. And And honestly, if you had asked me at the time, if you'd asked anyone that I worked with, they would have said, don't ask Julie to introduce you. If people get up on stage and they introduce you, but don't ask Julie to introduce you, because I would stumble and my knees would shake and my voice would waver, and I'd just make a hash of it, total hash of it. And I was quite happy with that. I was quite happy, building a very successful business, scaling it globally. And a big part of what we did was decoding and figuring out, okay, we have this incredible human being with a very unique story and a very unique background, who has this amazing idea and a potentially, an amazing service or product as well. How do we package all of that together? And then how do we amplify it at scale? How do we get the word out there in a way that's authentic to them, that moves quickly, that drives engagement and attention? That was our job.
Yep.
And so ran that business for about 15 years. And then I stepped back from that to have my children, because it was a global business and 24/7 timeline on that business.
Yeah.
And then I started a consulting company called Influence Nation. And I had, again, no intention of speaking. I was going to go, I work with CEOs, I work with leadership teams. I was standing out as the voice of authority in their space. And I went after our very first big client for this new company. And I sat down, I pitched the business, and they said, go away and, come back again in a couple of weeks. And I came back again, and they said, okay, in you go into this meeting room. And I went to this meeting room, and there was a woman I've never met before. And she said, it sounds really great. I don't know if we're interested in what you just pitched, but we'd love you to come and speak at our conference in 6 months. And I just remember looking at her thinking, I have to say something very quickly. And sure, I really want this business. So sure, of course I can do that. Okay. And in that time, it was a really interesting choice point. And again, I think that we all find ourselves at these choice points at certain times in our life, where either I take a step back from the arena, take a step back from the potential of something I believe in, take a step back from owning my voice, owning my ideas, my expertise, or I take a step forwards into the arena. And in that moment, I had to decide which way I was going to go.
Yeah.
And so I decided to take a step forward, and I said yes. And scurried around in the background for the next 6 months.
Trying to figure out how you're going to do this.
Trying to figure out how
I can't introduce someone to I am the someone.
I am the someone, right? I am the someone. And I could have very easily in that moment told myself a story, but I know what good looks like. Like, I represent some of the top 1% of speakers on the planet. I know what good looks like. And I could have let that story absolutely grind me into dust.
Yeah.
But instead, I decided to flip it and say, I know what good looks like. And if I know what good looks like, then I can do that.
Yeah, I love that.
I can emulate that. I can shoot for that. You can't be what you can see. Well, I can see it. Yeah. And so that was the decision point there. And so that's when that started happening, and it happened once, and then I was asked elsewhere and elsewhere and elsewhere. And it kind of moves on. And amongst all of that, we launched Inside Influence podcast, which went on to become top 50 iTunes all around the world, decoding what it takes to stand out, own your voice, and become an influencer in your space. So yeah, there you go. That's that's 3 minutes or less.
I love it. I love the fact that, and this is the story of how you get thrown right into the thick of it, right? It's not I woke up and went, this is what I should do. It was, hey, I had this idea to run this consulting business, and all of a sudden it was, okay, we're being steered here by what people actually need versus what I thought they needed. Am I going to step into what people are asking for? Or am I going to step into what I thought, this might look like? So, I love that, you got steered in that direction. She said, right, I want you to speak. What did that then look like off the back of that, where you end up, that becomes the new regular thing? It's gone from being okay, so this particular person's asking me to speak, but I've still got this consulting business. How did that turn into a regular thing?
I think someone asked me recently, what does good look like? So I was saying, you need mastery. You need to continually practice. You need to get match fit and to get good enough to really own your space. And someone was like, well, what does good look like? And I thought it was a really interesting question. And, eventually all I could think of to say is that good enough looks like when every one thing that you do creates 2 or 3 more opportunities. For every one opportunity you say yes to, it creates 2 or 3 more opportunities. That's the best definition of good that I can think of.
Yeah.
And so it was that commitment to match fit, right? Like I had 6 months to get match fit. I had 6 months to go from there's nothing I can think of that I would rather do less to not only am I going to do this, but I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to give it everything that I have. I'm going to own it.
Yeah.
And I think that commitment with anything that you do, it doesn't matter what you do. It could be a video. It could be a podcast. It could be social media. It could be pitching or presenting.
Yeah.
That commitment to match fit and mastery really helps.
Yeah.
And it's a big part of what I do now. And I love it now. And it's very, I feel very differently about it now than I used to.
Yeah.
Than I used to feel. And I think you also get to the stage, and you and I have talked to this before, about where this almost bulletproof place that doesn't mean that you're no longer afraid to do the thing. It doesn't mean that you no longer feel the fear going forwards. But what it means is you've shown up enough.
Yeah.
To know that not only will you show up, but you will show up as the best version of you.
Yeah.
And that enables you to feel the fear and do it anyway, right? Like I know now that I'm going to show up.
Yeah.
So when that little voice goes off in my head going, can it all, can it, pulling out, can it all.
Yeah.
Not only do I know that I will show up, but I know that I will show up as the best version of me.
I love that. And, we've had some very real conversations as you do speak. As we've obviously spoken at a couple of events together, and, we've got some more coming up, which is really exciting. And, one of the things, and being able to really talk about that, hey, you know what? Like this is hard even for those people that do it on a regular basis. But the reason I bring this up, because you specialize in influence, and I want to talk about that word in a minute, because I really, I feel like that word in itself triggers people these days, and it's very misunderstood. And we're going to come to that. So, but I just want to talk for a little moment around what you just said around showing up. And, you've just mentioned that you got thrown into this. You were the person that liked to be behind the scenes. And I would hazard a guess that a lot of our listeners right now are nodding, going, yeah, that is me, or that's been me. I like to be behind the scenes. But you guys are now in a driving seat of a business. And so, I'd love to know, Julie, you've become, a major influencer in your space. You've become an authority in your space on influence. And, I want to know, how do you go from being behind the scenes to becoming a major influencer in this space? And, we know how, my next question was, and a speaker in this space. Well, we know how that happened, but how do you then build that influence? Because, that day that you were sitting at that boardroom table, I'm sure you weren't sitting there thinking, well, I'm an authority in this space, so I feel really comfortable doing this. What did that journey look like for you? And how did you, I guess, establish within yourself a sense of authority that this is who I am and this is what I'm here to do?
There's a great quote that I heard recently that's, no one can beat you at being you. No one's going to be able to beat you at being you. And there's, when you ask about I talk about moving from expertise to influence, like transforming your expertise influence, or your unique story into influence. And the way that you do that is by first owning your story. Yeah. Right? Like that's where that starts. Brene Brown says you can either own your story or you can spend the rest of your life like hustling for your worthiness. Yeah. It starts by owning your story. And we talk about that in the terms of your impact zone. Everybody has a unique impact zone. When I first started out, my unique impact zone was I knew the world of speakers and thought leaders. And I knew the world of business, of starting, growing, and scaling a business. So you combine those two worlds. And that space where I'm holding my hands up for those who can't see me right now, in a cross formation. But where those two lines meet, that's your impact zone. You take two worlds where you have mastery, experience, and insights, and you overlay them. And so for me, in knowing those two things inside out, when I overlaid them, well, that was my impact zone. The ability, that was the space where I had unique insights and experience. That's where I could own my space as an authority, which was, how do you stand out as a voice of authority in order to build and grow and scale a business? And so it started there. Like, what worlds do I know better than anybody else? And it was funny. I had a conversation. This is way back at the beginning of the pandemic. I had done a speaking event for a particular direct selling company. And as part of what we had done together, I had offered as a prize a couple of short coaching sessions. And this lady came onto a coaching session, and we were talking about her unique impact zone. And she was like, you know what, I don't know what I'm an authority in. I just don't know. I just don't know what my zone of influence is in order to be able to start standing out. I just feel like anybody else in this business, just trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And I said, tell me a little bit about yourself. What have you done before you got here? And she said, I used to be a social worker. She said, I've always been in that kind of caring, supporting role. So I was a social worker for many, many years. And I was like, and the company that she worked for, it specialized in health products. Yeah. And I said, well, that's perfect. That's perfect. How many people out there right now, we're in the beginnings of this kind of global health crisis. How many people out there right now are in caring professions who need to take care of their health, who need to make sure that their cup is full before they try and take care of anybody else, or who are on the verge of burnout because all they do is take care of other people?
Yeah.
Like, that's a zone that you can own. Absolutely. Helping people who are in caring professions take better care of their health.
Yeah.
And it's deconstructing our own experience and our own story until we can find a space that only we can own.
Yeah.
That's the bridge.
Yeah. And that's so powerful and so true. I think a lot of us discount number one, those stories, because we think, number one, they're not important. No one wants to hear them. I was actually speaking to somebody recently who asked what I did for a living, and I explained, I speak, I teach on social media and so on. He goes, I would love to be a speaker. Yeah, this was one of those people who he was like, I'd love to be a speaker. I was like, wow, I've never met one of you before. He goes, I'd love to be a speaker, but he goes, I haven't had like a life-changing accident or, something crazy happen to me. He said, I don't have a story that is, game-changing. I'm not, and he's comparing himself to all these other people out there. And I said, well, neither have I. And he goes, yeah, but you've got something, right? And I was like, yeah, like I have some expertise in a space that people want to hear about, and so do you. And just like what you said then, I asked him that question, what do you do for a living? What are you really passionate about? What do you enjoy? And he said, I'm a real estate agent. I love helping people, understand the secrets of the industry and how to not only find the right home, but how to not fall in those pitfalls that real estate agents will often catch you in. And I was like, well, yeah, there's something right there, that people are going to care about, that you're passionate about, that you could speak on. And he goes, I never really think about that. And I think there's this assumption sometimes that you need to have some game-changing, life-changing story, something dramatic happen to you to make you worthwhile listening to. And, it's whereas something as simple as, hey, and I chatted with somebody else just today that was, she said, oh, look, honestly, the only thing I feel like I'm really great at talking about is menopause. I went, that's a great, very topical thing to be talking about. I think you hit the nail on the head right there. Let's talk about menopause. And she went, oh, do you think people want to hear about that? I think they do. I think they do.
And that story that we have to have climbed a mountain or, had some kind of life-changing event happen to us. Absolutely. There are people out there who have incredible stories and who tell stories about those experiences that we love to hear about.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think that social media has done and this new age of influence has created is we also just want to know about human beings.
Yeah.
I want to know your story. I want to know how you got where you are. I want to know how you learn. I want to know what's your unique point of view. What's your unique lens? And on top of that, you don't need everybody. Like, we don't need everybody. What the people you're going after are people just like you, are people who have walked the road that you have walked, who are trying to walk the road you have walked. You don't need everybody.
Yeah.
You just need a dedicated crew of a few.
Yeah, I think that's is so true. Just as you were saying that, I was thinking, I think there's so much need right now, not for the life-changing, shark bit my leg off story, because we can't relate to that. Whilst it's inspirational and interesting to listen to, and there's definitely a place for those stories. I think there's a need right now for people to feel like they're able to resonate with a story that they can place themselves in, because it gives them this sense of hope that I can also get what I need or to where I want to go, whatever that might look like, if I can hear from someone else like me who's walked that walk and been through it. And like what you said with this social worker and the woman with the menopause and even the real estate agent, these are all people who are living life, going through something that others are also wanting to hear from people that have done this before them and walked that walk before them. And I think there's a sense of, I want to feel some connection with others, like I'm not the only one experiencing these things I'm going through.
And you're right, not everybody is going to have these life-changing events happen to them. And the people that we're compelled by now, what we call grippingly human, they're grippingly human beings.
Yeah.
They're not superhuman. There's a reason that reality TV has gone crazy. Now we're watching other people watch reality TV, right? Like,
isn't it ridiculous? Like,
well, whether it's your thing or not, I don't know. It's not my thing. But what it tells us is that we want real. We want
100%
that we can relate to.
Yeah.
We don't want the perfect and the polish.
Yeah.
And this big story that we will probably never be a part of.
Yeah. Which really brings me to my next question, which is around influence. And what do you see influence to be in 2023, Julie? Because I think there's been a big shift in how we influence, but also what that word means. What does it mean today in 2023? What does influence really mean?
I think, for me, I've seen this wave, right? Like, when I first started out in the industry 20 years ago, the word influencer meant something very different than it has come to mean now.
Yeah.
For me, influence is very simple. Influence is the ability to say, look over here, and have somebody be engaged enough to look.
Yeah.
That's influence. It's the ability to stand out as a trusted authority in a particular field. It's the ability to attract rather than chase next level opportunities.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Those are all the things. And I think what's happened to the word influence is we've started to mistake popularity for influence.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Big difference between popularity and influence. And I think we need to start divorcing those two words. Yeah. Influence has nothing to do with popularity. Some of the most influential people I know have very few followers, but highly engaged people. They might not have a black book of 1,000, but they have the right people that they can call. And you and I were just talking before we came on air about somebody who has a black book of the right people that he can call, right?
Yeah.
That's influence. Yeah. And I think when we start thinking about it as popularity, it's the wrong metric. It's a vanity metric. It's not a business metric. It's not even a useful metric.
Yeah.
You can have 300,000 people that follow you and not be able to do anything with that, not being able to leverage that in any way, monetize that in any way. I would far rather you had 300 people loved what you do, who watch everything that you put out there, who share you with everybody that they know, than 300,000 people who occasionally like something.
Yeah, it is so true.
There's a difference between awareness and action. Yeah. There's that beautiful phrase, no one ever paid a mortgage with awareness.
Yeah.
Like, what we want is people being engaged enough to take action.
That's right.
And that's nothing to do with popularity.
That's right. And that was that conversation before around, it's as much about, I was going to say it's not about what you know, it's who you know, but it's as much about who you know as it is about what you know. And your knowledge is really powerful, but it's sharing that with the right people, right? And in the right way at the right time. You can talk about what you think. I love what you said before about, you sat in that room at that boardroom table and you thought you knew what your audience wanted. You thought you knew what they needed from you, and you did this pitch. And then they said to you, actually, and I love that they verbalized it, because a lot of the time I don't think we get the experience or the blessing, I suppose, of them telling you what they really want. But in this case for you, they did. And it's just a good example of what is your audience actually wanting from you, and what's that conversation need to look like, and being able to pivot and adjust that conversation and that knowledge that you're sharing with them, so that it is actually serving the audience that you're dealing with, versus just, I'm just going to, we've all seen people doing it where they're constantly vomiting what they think the world wants to hear and no one's paying them any attention, which is why they end up with 300,000 people that loosely follow them but really don't care about any of the stuff they're sharing.
I think one of the things that I talk about is keeping a relentless question radar, like getting fluent in the questions of your target market.
Yeah.
And it's such a simple game changer.
Yeah.
What are the questions your target market are asking about what you do? What, in their language, what are the questions that they're asking about what you do?
What are some of the ways that you go about acquiring those questions? I mean, I know certainly how we would teach people to find those in locations on social media, but how do you get familiar with those questions? How do you do that, Julie?
Well, I have literally on my phone. So on my phone, I have a note, and it's called questions. And so any question I'm kind of in a privileged position. People come up to me at the end of presentations and they ask me questions. A newsletter that goes out, people respond with questions. But I'm very proactive. If you sign up to my email list, if you download my ebook, you'll immediately get an email from me asking, well, what's the number one question that you have? Yeah. Like, I am constantly pulling out people's questions. If I'm at a client pitch and they ask me a question, I'll write it down. And those questions become the basis for all things. Yeah. They become the basis for my presentations. They become the basis for our posts. Yeah. Every podcast episode starts off with, here's today's question. It becomes the basis for everything. Yeah. And it's just a simple shift, as you said so beautifully. It's from moving away from what we want to say to what is it that people want to know. Yeah. And then owning those questions.
I love that. I love the changing of just the mentality around from I'm speaking to people to I'm answering those questions. And it really is, isn't it, just about being curious all of the time, listening to what people are saying, even in their comments on social media. One of the things I love about, using Thermomix as an example, another direct selling company, one of the things that their distributors are trained to do is to prioritize. They call it, I think they call it sync time. So after they do their demonstration, where they do their little cooking demonstration, they're actually trained to focus on the time where they're doing the dishes next to the host at the end of the night after everyone's left, and that host is asking questions and talking to them and paying attention to what that conversation sounds like, which I think is so powerful, because I don't think very often we're encouraged to pay attention to the small talk, and yet that can be where the magic happens, right?
Oh, absolutely. There was a guy I met, this is a little while ago now, but I've written about it a number of different times and talked about it a number of times. He's a mortgage broker. Mm-hmm. And he was just getting no traction, kind of doing your standard just blurt outs. It's the flip from out interrupting to out contributing. Yeah. Because the traditional form of marketing, right, is I'm just going to interrupt you as many times as I can until you buy from me.
Yeah. Until you need to shut me up, right?
Yeah. And how many of us love being interrupted?
Yeah. It's the best part of my day.
Yes, we love it. We love being interrupted. But that is the predominant form of marketing that we get told and sold. Just keep interrupting people. Yeah. And so shifting from this, shifting from interrupting what people are interested in to becoming what they are interested in. And so this mortgage broker, he was going in the normal playbook. He just kept interrupting people, letterbox drops, emails, ads, just like pop-ups, interrupt, and getting nowhere. And eventually he was kind of on his last ebb with it all. And he thought, you know what? I have a whole bunch of questions here that people have asked me about getting the right mortgage for them. I'm just going to answer them. And so he went to his part-time marketing person. He said, we're going to answer a question a day for 100 days. He called it the 100 days challenge. Question a day for 100 days. And that's exactly what they did. They just answered one question a day for 100 days. And it transformed everything.
Wow.
Guess what? If you answer a question that I have, what are the chances that somebody I know also has that question? If your answer is good enough, what's the chances where I'm like, that was really useful. I'm going to send this to such and such and such because I know that they're looking right now. Not only that, you start getting feedback, right? Like, that was so helpful. Can you also help me? I've often wondered this as well. You start getting feedback about what people want, and then you can adjust it the next time. And the next time people start sharing you, and then it blows up. And I think 100-day challenge is very optimistic.
That's an intense challenge, I'm going to say. I love that.
But I have encouraged so many people to do a 30-day challenge.
Yep.
Let's do a 30-day challenge. Question a day for 30 days.
Yep.
See what happens.
And I imagine you've seen some incredible results from people just switching that around and doing that challenge, right?
Yes, because I was actually talking to a founder recently who they did the 30-day challenge. So they saw me speak, they did the 30-day challenge. And I was like, what happened? Tell me what happened. And she said, it's really interesting. She said, we got a lot of feedback, a lot of people sharing it. She said, but, for the first kind of 20 odd days, I couldn't directly attribute any business to it. And she said, and then about a week later, I had a phone call from a major bank here in Australia. And they said, you know what, you've never heard from us before, but we've been watching your 30-day challenge. Now, they hadn't responded. They hadn't liked. There was no way of knowing that they were there.
Yeah.
But they were watching. And they were watching her show up consistently and continually as an authority in her space.
Yeah.
As an expert in her space.
Yeah.
And so, there's the immediate benefit of feedback and being shared and the immediacy of some opportunities, but never underestimate who's watching.
Yeah.
And who's observing you and how you're going and talking about you in the background, because the ripple effects just keep moving.
It is so true. And one of the things that we say to people, we do challenges as well, as social media challenges. And when we do those, one of the things that we make very, very clear is just because people are not interacting doesn't mean they're not watching. And, we talk, I recently did a podcast episode talking about the animals behind the trees in the forest. You can't see all the animals back there, but if you're standing in a clearing in the forest and you're surrounded by a thick layer of trees, there are animals back there. They can see you in that clearing. They're paying attention to what you're doing. But if you want to attract them into that clearing with you, you're going to have to show them that you're safe. You have to keep showing up. And there's certain things you don't do. You don't yell and scream. You don't chase them down, and you don't walk away from that clearing. And so it's a crazy analogy, I know, but our listeners know what I'm talking about. But the purpose here of using that visual is to remind people that, when, particularly with social media, Julie, I feel like we all behave one way and expect people to behave another. You ever notice, people are constantly saying, oh, I don't know if you hear this. You probably don't. It's probably just me. But they go, oh, I posted every day for 5 days and nothing happened, so I'm not going to do it again. It's a waste of my time. And I sit there and I think, hang on, when you sit down at night and, you're zoning out and you're scrolling through Facebook or Instagram, how many posts that get your attention that you look at? Think about reels. The last time you looked at some reels, how many of those did you comment on? How many of those did you interact with? And the fact that you didn't interact with them, does that mean that they didn't get your attention, that you won't remember them? No, I think we've become less interactive as social media has evolved and, and the way that we absorb information now has changed, yet we expect people, our viewers, to behave differently. And, you know, I love what you said there. I think it's just so important to remember just because they're not interacting with you doesn't mean they're not paying attention. It goes the same with influence, right?
Yeah. And it's, I talk a lot to people I work with as a coach about the myth of the magic button.
Yeah.
I think we would all love to believe that there's some kind of magic button, right? Like there's a magic button. If I press it once, everything, my dreams will come true. Everything will happen. If I post once, if I, do this one presentation,
I started a business page and I didn't magically get 1,000 followers. What's happening?
Yeah, and it's the myth of the magic button, and we all buy into it. I've bought into it in different ways, in different forms. I built this beautiful website. Why didn't they come?
Why didn't they come?
And there is no magic button. I've been doing this for 20 years. If there was, I would have found it. I would have pressed it. Believe me. There is no magic button. There is consistency.
Yeah.
There is clarity. There is contribution. There is captivation. And there is certainty. These are the things that you aim for. And if you do that often enough, then, magical things will start to happen. You shared an animal analogy. I'm going to share an animal analogy now. As soon as we're on animal analogies.
Oh, I love it.
You're going to kick me with mine.
Great minds think alike, right?
Yeah. So there's this amazing guy who's been dead a very long time called Buckminster Fuller. And Buckminster Fuller, he was a philosopher and inventor, incredible. And he talked about bees. And he would say that bees don't really know their true purpose in this world. Mm-hmm. As far as a bee is concerned, it's just picking up nectar, taking it back to create honey. Mm-hmm. And it's a bit like business, right? Like we show up, we do the thing that we think we're there to do, and then we go home and we hopefully kind of harvest some honey on the way. But actually, bees are pollinating every flower on the planet.
Yep.
They have no idea of the ripple effect of what they do when they just show up consistently and do what they're there to do. And it goes back to the story we talked about previously. When you show up with all of yourself, so other opportunities pop in that you could never have seen coming. Yeah. The ripple effect of what you do, you can't see until it arrives. Yeah. So just keep showing up.
Yeah. And I think too that, just coming back to that, becoming an authority, but also becoming an influencer doesn't necessarily mean being an expert. And I just want to I want to come to that for a little moment because I think we've probably got some listeners right now going, okay, that's all great. Becoming an influencer in your space, wonderful. But what if I'm starting out in my business? What if I'm brand new at this? What if I don't have runs on the board yet? And so how do I become an influencer? And just, as you answer that, I was actually having a really great conversation with somebody just this morning in a coaching call who, was in a very similar situation to that, where she said, I really just sort of started this business. She goes, how do I share things on social media to make people want to buy from me? And I said, you don't. I said, what are the conversations that they want you to have so that you can build the relationship to take it offline to then have a one-to-one conversation about the business? Don't have it online. Don't tell people what they need to hear from you, but what are the conversations? And she said, well, I guess, these are some of the common conversations I have with people now, and these seem to be the topics they're interested in. I said, great. I already know you're an authority in this space. And just because you've entered into a business where you've got to add to that, like it's another expertise again. I think there's a lot of people that assume I need to be an expert at the product or an expert at the building of the business that I haven't built yet before I've got the authority to have any influence over anybody else. So from someone starting out who's just getting going, what advice would you give them around becoming an influencer in their space?
I love what you said there about the conversation. We don't want you to drive a product. We have people driving products at us, like Mack trucks every second of every day.
Yeah, right.
We want you to drive a product. We want you to drive a conversation. We have no shortage of people driving products. We have shortage of people driving real, authentic, important conversations.
Mm.
And we talk a lot about, and I talk a lot about when I speak, the idea of becoming the translator.
Yeah.
Your job is to become the primary translator of your field. And what a translator does is the translator is someone who goes out to the fringes, to the places where I neither have the time nor the knowledge nor the expertise to go, and brings back information for me about something I care about in easy to digest language. That's a translator. And if you think about every single area of your life that you care about, parenting, it might be podcasting, it might be business, it might be health, it might be cooking, it might be needlework. If you think about it, you will have a translator that you go to, a go-to expert, somebody who you go to for the answers. You might follow them on social media. You might read everything they write, watch everything that they put up. The people that we follow, the people that we buy from, they're not the technicians. They're not the people with the most information. They're the people who translate that information for us using our language. Yeah. And so I would say that firstly, drive a conversation. What is the conversation you are trying to drive? What is the journey? We talk about decoding the road. What is the journey you are trying to help people walk? Mm-hmm. Where does it start? Where does it end? How can you decode that road for people? Yeah. If you want to get from here to here, here are all the places, here are all the levers you have to put on the way. You want to improve, let's pick menopause, right? You want to sail through menopause. All right, let's talk about that for a second. You're going to have to, nail eating. Let's get your eating straight. You're going to have to, sleeping is going to be a really big thing. Let's get that sorted. Okay, what's next? It might be HRT. All right, let's talk about that. What are the core levers? How can you decode the road for somebody? Yeah. How can you drive a conversation so that people are willing to follow? And then when you've done that, then you earn the right to go, you know what? You want to fast track this, or you know what? You want to make this so much easier. This is what I have learned and this is what I use. Yeah.
That's so true. I think all of that does come back right to your experience in that space. Here's my journey. This is why I'm speaking about this. This is why it matters. This is what's happened for me. And then, and I love that decoding, just break it down, simplify things. There are a lot of scientists out there. There are a lot of experts. We don't want to hear from another expert. We want to hear from a real person like us. And that's the beauty of people in this industry is you're all real people. You're all growing a business as somebody who, you're not an expert, in the medical industry or whatever it is that you do. And that's what makes you beautiful, because we've got enough of those. We don't need to hear any more jargon or any more, scientific studies about whatever. We need to hear about somebody who's been through something, who's just like me, and I can hear about that journey and I can relate to that person, so I can get an idea of what it might be like to actually go through it.
Your unique story, right? Go back to menopause again. What does, okay, I've had chemo. What does menopause look like for me? A woman who's gone through IVF. It's a very different menopause journey again. Yeah. Menopause with children under 5. That's a very different menopause journey again. Menopause journey for 50 plus women who are, that's where your unique story comes into play.
That's right.
Don't try and own a massive space. Yeah. Don't try and be the expert. This is where I think that we get caught with imposter syndrome.
We think we have to be the best, right?
Yeah, I am the expert on menopause. Yeah. No, there's a very particular road that you have walked.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's remembering we each have our own individual dream customer target audience, and it's different to the next person's. And when we try to be the person that they all go to, we end up trying to please everybody. And we all know that can't be done. It's impossible. So yeah, I love that. I think that's you're taking yourself down from that pedestal of having to be the expert and comparing yourself to others in your space, remembering that you are unique on your own and your story is important, and it will relate and resonate to a certain group of people, right?
And ironically, it's usually the part of your story that you least want to talk about.
Yeah, you and I talked about this actually. I'm gonna just be like super honest about this right now. The hardest part of any of my keynotes ever is the part where I tell my story. And I will do everything I can in every instance to try and get out of it. I will argue with my coach. I will argue with Greg. I'll even talk about, well, I've only got so much time and I want to jam as much teaching in as I can. I don't have time. And ironically, you and I were talking, Julie, before the last presentation I did, and I said, Julie, I think I should just cut out the part where I talk about myself. And you went,
No.
no. No, you have to own that. I think the words you said were, that's probably the most powerful part. And you haven't heard my story, by the way, for our listeners. It's not like you're saying this from a perspective of, I know what you're going to talk about. You said your story is probably the most powerful part of your entire presentation and will impact more people than likely most of the teaching that you do. But again, we think people are not interested in hearing that part. And so we typically leave it out. Talking about yourself isn't the easiest thing to do, right?
No, and we have this thing, and honestly, it's common between, I work with CEOs, like it's common across the board, this thing of, it's not about me. It's not about me. Yeah. I don't want it to be about me. It's about the information. It's about the knowledge. It's about the product. It's about the mission. It's about, whatever we think it's about.
Yeah.
And the truth of the truth is that it is about you. It is about you, and it is about you from a different place than you think that it is about you. It is about you from a place of contribution.
Yeah.
It is about you from a place of your voice, and your story is the most impactful vehicle for you to reach all of the people that you're trying to reach.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that makes it about you in a good way, in a place of contribution, a place of authenticity.
Yeah.
If you really want the things that you say that you want, then it needs to be about you. You need to make it about you.
Yeah. I love that. I'm going to ask a really controversial question now, and I don't actually know. She's like, oh, here we go. She doesn't know.
You sat back in my chair then. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Are we over? Are we done with this podcast? No, one of the things that bugs me, and I don't know, by the way, if Julie shares this same opinion right now, so this could go anywhere. But one of the things that bugs me is people establishing authority and influence, particularly on social media, in damaging ways by fear-mongering, by, that's the big one that we've seen over the last little while, by establishing influence and authority through tearing other people down, through negativity, and through being controversial deliberately in a space that triggers and creates tension, I suppose, between people. And this is one of the things, I just want to speak into this for a little moment, or I want to at least get your opinion on this. Is this something that you're seeing more of? And how do you feel about this method of establishing influence and authority?
Yeah, it's funny that you asked me, because I think on a panel that I think it was the panel you and I were on together.
It was the Dead Leg panel. We'll talk about it.
The Dead Leg panel will be known, a story for another time.
Yeah.
Someone asked me, what's the biggest decision I think people need to make in the realms of influence, of using their influence, developing their influence. And I answered, I don't think this is the answer they were looking for.
I think Greg asked you this question.
Was it Greg? It was my honest answer. And the honest answer is that I think that we need to make a choice as an individual and as societies and as communities about the type of influence that we're willing to allow. And, there are two different types of influence in the world. There's positive influence and there's negative influence.
Yeah.
And negative influence is fear, very simply, fear, drama, and outrage.
Yep.
You want to check in with your gut and see if someone's trying to get you to do something, someone's trying to influence your decisions. You can always tell if they ramp up the fear, drama, or outrage. And we live in a world right now where we're losing track of that a little bit. And I think that one of the issues is the media.
Yeah.
No finger of blame here, just very systemic. What has happened is that traditional media, so newspapers, magazines, used to have a viable business model. They were our only source of information. They could charge huge amounts of money for advertising, and we would pay to buy it.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant business model. Now what has happened is that the eyeballs are no longer there.
Yeah.
And so now the revenue is down. I think revenue's down. Last I heard, it's like 95%. 95%.
Yeah, wow. It's probably not that surprising, but it's still huge.
Yeah, because we get our information for free. And so what happens is then the only way to get our attention is to ramp up the good tried and tested methods of quick influence, which is fear, drama, and outrage.
Yeah.
And that's why every front page you see, usually there are some who are more of the usual suspects than others.
Yeah.
It's all fear, it's all drama, it's all outrage.
Yeah.
It's very easy to get people's attention.
Yeah, 100%, which is why it's becoming such a huge problem.
It works. We see politicians use it every day. And it's very effective in the short term. It's very, very effective. I think that we need to make a decision, firstly, about how we want to influence. And there's entire projects I've canned in my business where the advice that I received at the time was to do a marketing campaign that was based on fear. You will miss out, you will regret. Because that's not how I choose to show up. That's not how I choose to interact. And there is a different way of doing it, which is that contribution-based model, the inspiration and contribution-based model that we've talked about. But the fear, drama, and outrage, I think, you've got to choose whether you want to use it. And my advice would be no. But I think there's a larger decision there where we have to decide whether we want it to exist at all.
Yeah.
And, our attention now is the most valuable currency on earth.
Absolutely.
There is no currency on earth more valuable than human attention right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that beautiful saying that if you are not paying for the product, then your attention is the product. And think about how many products we use where we don't pay for them. Yeah. So where you put your attention dictates everything, the algorithms, what you see, what your children see, what shows up for more human beings in more places. And so what we're willing to engage in when we're on social media platforms, what we're willing to trade our attention for, what we're willing to pay money for, that impacts everything. And I think that making a very deliberate decision about what we want to see more of, our attention there, and what we want to see less of. Yeah. And literally constricting our attention away from that.
Yeah. It's so true. And, I had to remind myself of this very thing recently, because it's not just about how do we get attention. It's also what are we doing what are we allowing people to use to vie for our attention? And I think that's so powerful you bring that up, Julie. There's somebody in particular that I have in the past watched on LinkedIn, and this is somebody who I used to really, really respect. But in recent years, I've noticed that this particular person gets attention by being overly dramatic. And you hit the nail on the head with those three key words, right? And this person it just fits within all of those. And one of the things I had to remind myself, because I was getting really cross about it, I was getting really cranky, every time I saw a post from this person, it was a complaint about something or something dramatic, or he goes to the extent of if he trolls, and this is a top business consultant, a very well respected, best-selling author, but somehow he's got to the point where he now trolls people's posts, and if he sees something that he thinks he can pick a hole in, he will comment, he put a cutting comment on that person's post, another business person, in order to get attention, which it does do, and it creates this backwards and forwards drama, usually gets a number of people into the sort of person that loves an argument, right? And I had to remind myself, because I found myself getting really frustrated, and I constantly wanted to just, go into battle for these people. And I realized I was actually giving him what he wanted simply by paying attention to what he was doing. So I had to stop myself doing it. I was having another conversation with a company founder backstage a few weeks ago who said to me, look, I get why social media is important for our people, but don't you get kind of sick of, people dancing half naked in front of a mirror, doing these reels, trying to get attention, or sharing the latest photo of the breakfast that they're eating? And I said to him, that's all fine, but you realize the reason you're being delivered this content is because you keep looking at it. And he said to me, what do you mean? What do you mean? It just keeps appearing on my feed. I said, stop looking at it and you'll stop seeing it. He goes, seriously? It's that simple? And I said, yep, it's that simple. Likewise, what you're delivering to people is, what people are doing with what you're delivering is dictating what they're going to see more of. And so if people are not being delivered your stuff, it means you haven't yet worked out what it is that they want to be seeing.
And these people, they're paying attention to every metric. They're smart. There's a reason that they are going out with the messaging that they are going out with. They're paying attention to the metrics. Yeah. They're paying attention to the views. They're paying attention to the engagement. If something else works better, that's what they will move towards. Yeah. And so I think getting very discerning about where we put our attention, not just for ourselves, as you said, the more you engage with it, the more it will show up for you. In like life in general, just a lot faster. The mirror's a lot faster on social media. But not only that, but it will show up for more people.
Yeah. But also remembering too that people don't necessarily remember what you did, but they are going to remember how what you did made them feel at that time. And there's a post I saw very recently from somebody who has got a really big following. She's an international influencer. She's what you would consider to be a very inspirational person. But I saw this person make a big mistake the other day, and I looked at it and I was like, oh, I think you've forgotten this one key thing. Because what she did was she posed in front of a mirror and this is a woman who's a very, very fit woman. She's probably in her 60s and she is an incredibly fit woman. You'd know who she was if I said her name, so I'm not going to say her name, but very fit woman, stunningly beautiful, but she's got a huge amount of influence. And so what she did was she posed in a very revealing bikini, but it was, the G-string type bikini, and it, had like all this glitzy, glamorous stuff going on. She had her high heels on and she posed in front of the mirror. And essentially she challenged people to say, I'm really confident in who I am and, more people should be doing this. And, and it was all about this woman confidence and rah, which is great. However, the problem with that is that the vast majority I know of her followers are not confident women. And when they see this picture of her, this was the instant feeling I got was they're going to see this. They're not going to resonate. They're not going to feel like that could be me. They're going to look at this and feel challenged by that, because what you're essentially saying is if I don't like this, if I don't feel comfortable with this post, then there's something wrong with me and my confidence level and I need to get over it because it's making you feel good, which was essentially what she was saying in the post she put up. And what really frustrated me about it was naturally the post went viral because she was half naked and that's what sells. And so she's looking at that metric. But I feel that she'd done all of this damage to her actual real audience, the people that were likely to do business with her, that she had been influencing, because those are the people that needed to be built up, not to feel like, well, I could never do that, therefore there's something wrong with me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, context is important. I'm a big believer. It's it's your body, honey. Like you do you. Like you do what feels comfortable to you. And obviously, she felt very passionately about whatever message she was putting out there.
Yeah.
However, I do think that the context is important. There are certain platforms and places to share certain things. There's certain things that I wouldn't share on social media. There's certain things I wouldn't share on LinkedIn because it's not the right context for them. But I might share on Instagram because that's a different kind of a context. So I think, bottom line, you make the decisions that are comfortable to you, but you have to bear in mind the context that you're working with.
Yeah.
And if the majority of people are going to feel alienated by what you're putting out there, if you're fine with that, if you're deliberately, this is controversial and I want it to be controversial.
Yeah, I'm going to get the drama version of attention.
Yeah. If that's what you're going for, then, do it consciously and knowingly. But yeah, you have to bear in mind the context of who you're talking to.
Yeah.
And also, you know, we're not going to get it right all of the time. You know,
No.
none of us get it right all of the time.
But the challenge is paying attention, right? Listening to
Yeah.
what people are saying, looking at, they're voting with their eyes. And, you know, if they're not paying attention or if they're not loving it, I feel like if you have to defend what you're doing before you even do it, it's probably a good reason to stop and think about it. And this was one of those instances because the whole post was defending the video of her posing in front of the mirror.
Obviously, she was anticipating.
Yeah. I have no question in my mind about that at all. But
and who knows? Who knows? Maybe she looks back at that and goes, you know, that felt really important to me. Maybe she looks back and goes, you know,
I won't be doing it. So.
a wise move. Maybe she looks back and goes, that was one too many coffees.
Or something else. Yeah.
Sat down and taken a breath before I jumped into that. But you know, you see a lot of people get cancelled. I think Marie Folio had one recently, and Brene Brown's had a few where, you know what, if you're going to stand up and you're going to be out there, every step you make is not going to be the right one. Yeah. You know, you're going to have missteps. You're going to have words that come out of your mouth that you think, wow, I should have said that very differently. You know, we're all going to have them. But as you said, you know, you pay attention.
Yeah.
Pay attention to the feedback. You care enough to want to know how you came across to the people that you're there to serve.
Yeah.
And whether you came across in a supportive way, whether you came across in an alienating way. You pay attention and you adapt and you adjust and you apologize where necessary.
Yeah.
And even that, you know, I see prominent people apologizing, and I love it because we do not model apologies enough.
That is very true.
Parents, as partners, as professionals, as leaders, you know what? When you are getting it right, you are vanilla. You are vanilla. No, it's good. But when you get it wrong and you own it, and you stand up and say, I could have done that better and I will, and here's how.
Yeah.
I truly believe that has more impact than in the moments when you get it right.
Yeah, so true.
And it shows more of who you are as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Julie, just as we wrap up, do you have a couple of just quick tips that you can give our listeners around how they can become more influential from wherever they happen to be in their business, from whether they're brand new in the business or they've been doing it for a long time? What are some quick tips you can share with them to help them in this space?
Okay. Tip number 1, pick one thing, do it consistently. Mm-hmm. One thing, do it consistently. It could be a weekly live. It could be answering a question a day for 30 days. It could be writing a weekly newsletter. It could be a weekly podcast. It could be pick one thing, do it consistently, commit to mastery of it. So that's my number 1. Number 2, forget the confidence myth. I think, you know, the number 1 word that I've seen over 20 years keep the most brilliant people, ideas, movements, businesses on the sidelines, never ever reaching their full potential, is usually that one word somewhere in there. Confidence. Yeah. Somewhere they are waiting for. I will step up, stand out, do video, go live, agree to present on stage, share my story when I feel more confident. Yeah. And it just breaks my heart because I have never not once seen it arrive. Yeah. It doesn't arrive. It's the result. It's not the ingredient. Confidence shows up when we show up over and over and over again. Yeah. It's the result. It's not the ingredient. It's never going to show up before you do. And as kids, I feel like we know this, right? Like my children know this. They know they've got to do something over and over and over and over again to feel confident. In fact, by the time confidence arrives, it's completely irrelevant. Yes. Because you're already doing it. You are the thing, right? But something happens somewhere along the lines as we transition from childhood to adulthood where we start believing that confidence needs to show up before we do. Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. And so I think forget that word. Forget that word. And what I teach is you need to tap into something I call the mindset of certainty instead. And it's very quick and simple. The mindset of certainty sounds like this. You know, today I will give you the best that I've got. where all of my experiences, where everything I have learned, where all of my mistakes, all of my wins have brought me. I will give you the best that I have.
Yeah.
And tomorrow, if something changes, the information changes, or I change, then I will adapt. Today, I will give you the best that I've got. That is gravity, and that is the most powerful force.
Love that. Yeah.
So, yeah, pick one thing, do it consistently. Forget about confidence.
Yeah. That is so true. I love that. I think they're great tips, and I think absolutely anybody can apply those. So thank you for sharing those. And I'm loving the whole idea of challenging yourself, whether it be for 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, 100 days, whatever that needs to be, but form a new habit and answering a question a day, I think is brilliant. So what a great piece of advice, great golden nugget in there. Now, Julie, I've got a couple of quick questions for you. These are my favorite questions of the whole interview. I know our listeners love these questions too. So are you ready?
Hang on, you adjusting.
No, right. So question number 1 is this. What is your favorite book for our accelerator book list?
The Big Leap.
Oh, The Big Leap.
Bye. I need to look it up for you. The Big Leap by. I've interviewed him for the podcast.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Put it in the show notes.
We'll put it in the show notes.
I've interviewed him. He's amazing. For some reason, my mind has gone blank. But The Big Leap.
The Big Leap. All right. We'll put that one in the show notes so our listeners can check that one out. We have got a lot of big readers. They love listening to audiobooks, reading books. And so, yeah, really keen to check that one out. Now, this is probably one of my favorite questions. And I know you laughed when I gave you this one, so I'm curious to hear your answer. It is, if you could have a superpower, any superpower, what would it be and why?
100%. The ability to transport myself anywhere in the world in a moment.
Yeah. Officially, 100%. I was laughing about this the other day because our most common answer is flying. And we were flying. Well, so this is the thing. We're around the dinner table the other day, and one of my kids, we said, look, I want you guys to each come to the table with a conversation starter for the family. And one of the kids stole my question and asked, if you could have any superpower, what would it be? And one of the boys said flying, and my daughter just looked at him and went, why could you fly if you could just teleport? And I was like, it's a really good point.
Exactly. I want to fly.
Don't fly. Don't waste that time.
I want to have lunch in Paris. I want to go for a cup of tea with my parents in England. I want to hang out with my best friend in San Francisco. And then I want to be
back home for bedtime.
Yeah, in time for bedtime. Who wouldn't want that?
That's really true. Who wouldn't want that? But I do feel like life would get boring really quickly because what excitement is left? What anticipation is left?
Oh, you do not realize the many places I could teleport myself to in many situations.
I would keep myself occupied for the rest of my life. Don't you worry about that. Oh, I love it. Okay. Next question, your favorite quote. You've shared a few with us today. So
I think it's an anonymous quote. I don't know. This one is genuinely anonymous. It's not that I've just forgotten. The world is not made of atoms. It's made of tiny stories.
Ooh, I like that one. I've not heard that one before. I love it. The world is not made of atoms. It's made of tiny stories.
Yeah.
Wow. That's brilliant. I love that. I'm going to steal that one.
Steal it.
And the very last one, if you could go back in time and say one thing to your past self, what would that be?
Gosh, I think the biggest lesson I have had to learn time and time again, that if I could save myself the trouble, would make a profound impact on my life, would be that if you are swimming against the tide, stop swimming. There are times in life where you can just, if the universe is moving in one direction and you're trying to force it into another, guess what? The universe is going to win.
Yeah.
It's going to win every time. And it's a bit like, if one door closes, stop headbutting the door. Like, turn around, see if there's an open window, if there's another door,
Yeah.
Like, the world is full of amazing possibilities and synchronicities and opportunities. And when you try and swim against it, you are going to exhaust yourself. You are going to burn out. You are going to break before it does. And so stop swimming.
Yeah, that is
Float for
so
a while, watch, pay attention, see where it spits you out. It might not be the opportunity you thought you were after. It might be a different one. But conserve your energy.
Yeah.
Because something else is around the corner.
Yeah.
Probably.
So true. I love that. And what a beautiful note to finish on, Julie. Thank you so much for your time. I know we've gone way over today, but I've loved this conversation. There have been so many golden nuggets in there. So really appreciate you. Thank you for joining me. And it's been such a pleasure chatting with you again.
Oh, it's always lovely to spend time with you, either on a panel or on stage or on a quick mobile phone call. You do such a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got many stories to share about those. I know that we didn't get to talk about them today, but there's certainly we've had a little bit of fun in our few events that we've done together, which have been, I feel, rather drama filled already. So who knows what will happen in June? We'll come back with all sorts of stories.
I'm let's just hope that both of us make it off the stage safely.
I know. It's
one thing that's kind of gone wrong.
I said the dead leg panel, guys. We'll share the story one day, but let's just say I needed help to get off the stage that day. So I did learn a lesson. Do not cross your legs while sitting on a stool on stage for too long. You will lose blood flow, guaranteed, in one of your legs. So yeah.
And to this day, I regret not running back and helping you. But I
didn't talk to you for a very long time after that. No, Paul Jones from Senegence came back and helped me limp off stage. My husband also was with you and walked off stage and left me
just behind. Didn't know it had happened. Anyway, no. We did.
So everyone in the audience knew. But like I said, all sorts of crazy things happen, and these are the fears that you have when you get on stage. And let's face it, some of those fears come true from time to time.
They do, and it just makes you all the more bulletproof next time, because you think, you know what,
right.
If I can do that, I can do anything.
I will just say I got off that stage that day, and Lisa McGuinness-Smith, who many of our listeners know, just tapped me on the shoulder and she said, "Do you want me to tell you about the time I actually fell off the stage?" And I thought, great, definitely feeling better. So, and
they're the girlfriends you need around you, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
When you make a fool of yourself, they go, you know what, that was bad, but let me tell you a time when I did it worse.
Yeah, exactly. So what a great note to finish on. Look, guys, I love where this has gone, and the reminder to get out of that comfort zone of yours. You're not going to do any growing in there. So, I love that story, Julie, of where everything started from and where you're going. And I'm super excited to see what's next for you. So we'll put some links as well in our show notes if people want to reach out to you, Julie. I know you've got some amazing resources as well. Have you got anything in particular that you'd like to share with our listeners?
There's the influencer code ebook, which goes through, I very quickly mention, clarity, contribution, captivation, consistency, certainty, the core pillars of standing out as an influencer in your space. It's very quick and easy. So you can download that. It's free. Just pop in your email address and you're good to go. And Inside Influence podcast, which comes out every 2 weeks, and where I speak to some of the world's leading minds on standing out.
And you've had some unbelievable people on that podcast. So we'll put a link to that as well so people can check that out. But again, thank you for joining us, and thank you to our beautiful listeners for tuning in again this week. It's been great having you. Make sure you share this episode with somebody that you feel can benefit from listening to the amazing Julie Masters, and have an amazing week. We'll see you on the podcast again next week. That's it from us for today. Bye for now. Thank you for joining us in this episode of the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. If you love listening and you found that this was helpful for your direct selling business, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also check out the recommended video that's popped up on your screen right here. I look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye for now.